Hi, we are here with Lang Sias, who is running for Colorado State Treasurer. Explain a little bit why you decide to run.
Well, I have a passion for service, both in the military and serving in the legislature, and then have a real background in some of the issues that the treasurer has to deal with, including overseeing our state pension system and weighing in on the economy, the general state of the economy, and then really have a real interest in those issues. And I'm very, very passionate about trying to restore some balance to our statewide leadership on economic issues and to serve as a champion for our taxpayers. This state has just gotten very, very expensive with one party controlling everything. And I think it's time we bring back some balance and lower some of the costs on families and small businesses.
How will you lower the cost?
Well, first of all, I think it's important to lead by example, as we learned in the military when running the treasurer's office itself. The current treasurer has increased the size of that office by almost 50% in the last 3 years, when families and small businesses were really hurting under COVID. I think we can set a better example. Two, I want to serve as a strong and independent voice on our public pension system, which is very important to taxpayers and to businesses and to the members of that system. And then three, I will use the bully pulpit, the authority of that office, to weigh in on economic issues, specifically standing up for our Taxpayer Bill of Rights, which, as you know, gives us the right to vote on tax increases and to vote on tax refunds. And I believe very strongly that voters ought to be able to do that, in contrast to my opponent, who has come out and said that he would lead the fight to get rid of Tabor.
Tabor is very important. What you can do to secure Tabor? Because we know that some bills went through there and didn't pass, but we have to secure Tabor. In what way? What can you do?
Well, you have to get out and travel around the state and use the authority of the office to explain why Tabor is so important. And I think people understand that what makes it important is that it requires a conversation. It forces a conversation between our elected officials, our politicians, and the voters and their constituents. And it makes the politicians be accountable for why they need our money and what they're going to spend it on and the results that they actually get, just like any small business and any family budget. And there's been a big movement among the party that controls the state right now to get rid of Tabor, because they actually want to be able to reach into our family budgets, our small business budgets, take that money without asking our permission. And so I think that's very, very important. And when you get out there and explain it to people, I think they get it at a very gut level.
Yep. In what way will you support small businesses?
Well, just as a little bit of background, I grew up in a small business, literally in the basement. Neither of my parents have been able to graduate from college. They were very smart, very hardworking people. And so I grew up with a machine shop in the basement, and my first jobs were sweeping up the floor, the metal shavings off the floor of the machine shop. So I think I have a real gut level respect for the people who form small businesses and work to create them. One of the things that's really hurting our small businesses is the fact that there have been a lot of regulations that have been put on them, fees and regulations, that are driving up the costs for them. For example, we saw what has happened to our energy industry here in Colorado, which I think has had a big impact on communities in Weld County and in Adams County, and then certainly on the western slope. And we've seen huge job losses there, which impacts all sorts of families. And I think it's very important that we bring a cost-benefit analysis back to how we look at our regulations. For example, there are new building codes that were passed in the last session that are going to drive up the cost of new houses by $12,000 to $13,000 a house. That impacts families. It impacts the business people that work in the construction trade. So that's very, very important. We've also seen, in an effort to get around TABOR, there was legislation passed in 2021 which created 11 new fees on everything from gas to Uber rides to delivery services, and also created 4 new enterprises, which, as you know, is one way to get around TABOR and further reach into our pockets. So again, advocating for we should be judging ourselves by not by how much money we spend as a government, but by the results that we actually get. And that's a big difference, and it's something that any small business person, I think, really understands. And we can, it's also, I can talk about education too, because how we spend the money there is incredibly important.
That's another important area.
Very, very. I served on the education committee in the legislature, and was very, very involved in, we got actually first in the nation pro-school choice legislation passed that equalized the way the funding worked within a district, so that a kid could move from one school to another, and the funding would be equal within that district, which is very, very important. And I want to see the money going to the classrooms and to the teachers, and instead of to an expanded administration.
Okay. Between you and your opponent, mention 3 key points that make you better for the position.
Sure. One is, I think the distinction on TABOR, first of all, is incredibly important, because it's a bright line distinction. I am for it, I support it, always have. He has come out and said he wanted to lead the fight to get rid of it. So that's one key point. 2 is regarding our state pension system, otherwise known as PARA. I was very, very involved in the compromise negotiations and reforms that we did in 2018 that really saved PARA, because it was going to go to a very bad place, which would have hurt the members, the taxpayers, and all Coloradans. And we have put it in a better place. And I have served for the last 3 years on an oversight committee still looking at PARA. My opponent actually voted against those reforms. So I'm the only candidate who has a record of leading on PARA reform. And then 3, how I will use the power and authority of the office will be to weigh in so that we have cost-benefit analysis of our regulations, and that we measure the actual effects of our spending. Again, trying to bring some of the principles from the private sector into the public sector, and also drawing on my experience in the legislature.
Okay. Anything else that you want to add that I didn't ask you?
I'd just like to mention my family, if I could, because that's something that's very important to me, and I'm very proud of them. I've been married for 24 years as of last Tuesday. So we just celebrated our 24th anniversary, and lived in Jefferson County for 22 years. And then we have 3 children, a daughter who is a freshman at the School of Mines, and then 2 boys who are in 7th and 9th grade in Jeffco Public Schools. So we are, spend a lot of time, obviously a lot of time invested in that, but we're very invested in what happens in the schools, and what happens in our economy, and what happens to our families.
Well, that's good. Very good. Thank you.
Well, thank you
for being here on La Prensa de Colorado.
Thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.